Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another Portfolio Executive podcast with my rhythm pal, Valerie Merrill, Learning and Development Specialist. More about that later. But in the virtual studio, coming straight from the other side of the Atlantic, is our dear friend and co-portfolio executive, Jeff Krehmer. Welcome, Jeff. He's a mechanical engineer and has had a long and interesting career that has led him to becoming what we all know as a fractional executive. And we'll talk a little about that too. So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you the silliest of questions. How the hell did you end up here?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I started out, I was the engineering manager for a company. It was an oil and gas company. We specialized in wellhead equipment. And when COVID came, after several years of low oil prices, you might recall the Saudis basically tanked the oil market from 2014 to 2020-ish.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so our company went through a whole bunch of cuts, and then COVID was kind of like the last one, and I got laid off and decided, hey, I'm gonna start out on my own, or at least look for some work. And that's how I ended up getting in contact with Charles McLaughlin. And he has quite a reach because, of course, I'm in central Alberta in Canada, and
Yeah.
he's located in the UK. So
Well,
uh,
he's located partly in the UK and partly across the pond.
yeah, that's fairly recent, though. I think when I first got in touch with him like 6 years ago, he was
Yep.
basically UK, as
Oh,
I recall.
oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Anyway, yeah, that's how I got introduced to the portfolio executive group, and then uh, you know started learning from Charles, and here we are.
So, obviously, the portfolio executive is all about promoting the idea of a group of highly qualified fractional executives. And people often ask me, what the hell is that? So, what do you see as a portfolio or a fractional executive, anyhow? How do you
Well,
explain?
so in my case, you could call it maybe a fractional technology officer, but really, I just think of myself more as a consulting engineer, and I work primarily with companies that don't have the need for a full-time engineer, but they still need to have some engineering review and oversight in what they do. So I end up doing, drawings for them. I'm also a certified SolidWorks professional, so that's a CAD specialist. I could do finite element analysis and various other CAD applications. And yeah, basically, for the most part, clients have found me, and I end up helping them out with their particular needs, and it's kind of a win-win for both of us.
Val, have you worked with many mechanical engineers before?
I did some training for some engineers many, many years ago. Um, I think they had to start doing what you would lovingly call client presentations. And being tech guys, yeah, it wasn't their first port of call, as it were. So we had all sorts of different work around putting information together and making it easy to understand in PowerPoint and then delivering it.
Oh,
Uh,
well.
we did that. Mm.
It's a wonderful tool. Well, when I was in university, we had to take one course in communication studies. But at that time, I graduated in 1992, so PowerPoint was not something I was trained on. And then it was only in the early 2000s when I took a self-employment course that I learned PowerPoint through one of the trainers. She just kind of walked me through how to do the basics, and the rest of it I learned.
It is the omnipresent presentation tool, isn't it? Let me get straight to the hub of it. I'm going to ask you a couple of more hard questions. What sort of businesses do you think are really good for bringing someone like yourself in part-time instead of, for instance, hiring a full-time person?
Well, I can say that when the clients that I have are some of them are startups. So I've got two companies that I'm working with that are in the greenhouse industry, and they're developing some innovative technologies. Two of my clients are also in like automotive. So it's the specialty part of automotive industry. If you're building a car dealership, you need to have like a oil change
Right.
center. And so these guys specialize in that particular thing. And then they need some engineering drawings done for each of their projects and engineering approval so that the city can say, okay, you've done your due diligence and all that sort of stuff. And then another company that I work with help to review their designs for. Are you familiar with like portable skid trailers for camps?
Bizarrely, I am, but yes.
No, but do tell us more.
So essentially in Alberta in particular, and this can be anywhere, but say you're setting up a mining camp in the middle of nowhere, you're going to send out a bulldozer, clear out the area, cut down the trees, and basically set out a flat area where people can then put in these portable skids. So they get transported out with flatbed trucks, and then they get positioned there at the site, and you can have a whole camp in the middle of the bush. And that could be for logging, that could be for mining, that could be for oil and gas. And in Alberta, that's mostly what it is oil and gas. So if you have a drilling rig or something like that, you need that kind of area and then someplace to let the people live.
Funny enough, one of my clients was into mining, mineral mining in Canada, so that's why I know the terminology. But yes,
Uh,
um, okay. And if you know the kind of businesses you're looking for, how do you differentiate which gig to take on? And also, and this is perhaps the harder one, how do you know when to walk away from one?
Oh,
Well, I'll start with the walk away from one. You get
Okay.
a pretty good feel for people and how they're going to be to work with, just by meeting and interacting with them. And unfortunately, some startups want you to work for nothing, or they want you
Yeah.
to, um, keep on adding more and more and changing the project as you go along, and not recognizing that scope creep is one of the biggest reasons that projects fail.
That's the killer of projects, isn't it? Scope creep.
it's the same in IT. It's the same in any industry. You start with
Yeah.
one and then they shift the sand and you go, hang on a minute. This doesn't resemble anything that we began with.
Yeah.
These aren't goalposts. Where are the goalposts gone?
Oh, yeah, what are we doing here? Yeah.
Through my professional organization, I took a project management course, and that was one of the things that they pointed out. They said, basically get your contracts where the goalposts are, what your deliverables are going to be, and all that sort of stuff, and then make the penalties for changing that pretty steep. So they basically stick with that. And if they do want to change, at least then it becomes worth your while to do that.
Okay, so on top of that, I'm going to ask you even harder question. You join into a business, and it may be for a long period of time, but ostensibly you're an outsider, right?
Right.
So how do you drop into that business and build trust quickly without ruffling feathers?
Well, I mean, being a certified engineer in Alberta, carries a certain amount of weight and shows that you've got the training, the education to do stuff. And we're a self-regulating profession. So essentially, when I take on a new project, I have to go and read the codes and learn about the industry before I can go in and sign off on stuff. And we're required every year to upgrade our training and also to report what our competencies are. So if I take on a new industry, like say learning how to do weld procedures or something like that, then I can include that in my scope of practice.
So how do you stop brilliant ideas from staying technically perfect but commercially useless, as it were?
Yeah.
How do I stop brilliant ideas from being technically perfect? Well,
Yeah, I've seen this happen. We've all seen this happen.
yeah, I think the way to get stuff built is you just start doing it. Yeah, it's like you don't go for perfect right off and basically gradually improve each iteration. That's why you have, Mark 10 of various designs or whatever. So, yeah, you solve one problem, then that opens up the door into what other problems are, and then you try to solve them in order, or maybe you can solve two or three at the same time. But it's an iterative process.
Right. So you can only really find out by doing it.
I would say so. And of course, budgets are never, as big as we would like them to be. So you have to start and do a proof of concept or a prototype and then build from that.
Can I dig into your innovative side? Because
Sure.
I know we've already had conversations about stuff which is one could be considered really innovative. Although between you and me, a lot of those ideas are quite old anyway, but just put together right, right?
Yeah.
Um, what's genuinely exciting you right now about future thinking ideas?
Well, one of the things that I'm really excited about is, and I write about it in my book, is the potential for producing energy, particularly for data centers and for artificial intelligence or cryptocurrency mining. If you listen to any of the big leaders in the industry, they will say the limiting factor on any AI data center is the power, the
Energy,
electrons.
energy,
Yeah,
energy.
and essentially, several of them have said that compute basically in its fundamental form is flowing electrons.
Yeah.
And the bottleneck right now, because of the war in Ukraine, the Russians are, targeting transformers and generating stations. So the industry is trying to resupply those, and at the same time, trying to supply the market with the extra energy that they want for these data centers. And we're talking about Tesla's building a 1 gigawatt data center, I think, in Texas. And if you listen to other people, they're saying, they're going to use as much energy as New York City, which is like 10 gigawatts just for their data centers. That's, I think, Mark Zuckerberg or OpenAI, one of the two, I can't recall. But anyway, the demand is huge, but the trouble is the lead time for these grid scale transformers and generators is like 2 to 3 years, and
Yeah.
that's after these companies have ramped up production. And copper demand is also a big thing because copper demand is going to double in the next 20 years. And I read that in the next 20 years, we will produce as much copper as we've produced in the last 10,000 years.
Wow. Your book then, Infinite Resources, when did you write that? That's a few years ago. So you were ahead of the curve with all of this, weren't you?
December 2003 is when it came out.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it took me 3 years to write. It should have been done a lot sooner. But if anybody's ever written a book, some people can bang them out in a month and other people take several years. I'm in the latter category.
I'm just going to refer to my own experience. One of my earliest jobs was I was assistant manager for a group of PDP 1173s, which are a deck product, which used to sit on a vat of liquid nitrogen. Even then, they had massive energy issues. And the energy issues, as you say, Jeff, are only going to quadruple and quintuple and crikey knows what else. All we keep hearing about is that AI is the problem because it's hit a wall with regards to power and cooling. How real is that problem? Do we have a way of solving it? It's still
I think there's numerous ways of solving it. And I mean, you listen to Elon Musk, he's planning on putting satellites into space that'll be data centers and, work directly off of solar energy. We have so many abundant forms of renewable energy. Of course, the traditional things like wind and solar are intermittent, so you need battery systems to work with those. But if you're looking at, say, geothermal, that is, continuous power. And of course, nuclear is an option as well. I'm a fan of pretty much all of those, including, I like the idea of thorium reactors because you use spent nuclear fuel to basically operate them. You need to get the neutrons from the spent fuel.
we have plenty of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What I write about in my book is an idea that's been around forever. So, is this a good time to go into the book, or are you very?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why not? What is the premise of the book?
So the book's called Infinite Resources, and I'll just read the subtitle here. How to Sustainably Develop the Arctic by Supplying Green Hydrogen, Fresh Water, and Healthy Food to the World while mitigating the negative effects of anthropogenic climate change.
So
So,
if I can take my hot take on it
mhm.
before you go into any detail, you're saying if we do all this stuff, or we do all this in one place, then we mitigate one against the other. So it becomes almost like its own mini ecosystem.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so we get the cooling of the Arctic, we get the heat generation from the data centers, we get the solar reception because we don't have issues with cloud cover and so on and so forth. It's or not so much.
Yeah, in the summertime, there's lots of sunshine in the Arctic. In the winter, of course, there's none. But the first chapter of my book talks about addressing some of the problems in the world. And so I talk about replacing fossil fuels, the rising sea level, ocean currents changing, the Arctic Ocean becoming ice free. The fact that even today, 1 in 4 people, that's 2.2 billion people, don't have access to clean drinking water on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah, it's a travesty.
Yeah, people are still malnourished and starving. Interestingly enough, malnourishment doesn't mean you don't have enough food. It can mean that you have too much food and aren't getting enough
Or the wrong
nutrition.
food. Or
Yeah.
the wrong food.
Then there's, of course, weather-related disasters, overfishing, plastic pollution in the oceans.
Yeah.
Anyways, I talk about all of those, and what I'm advocating is we can fix all of those by developing these projects in the Arctic. And as an example, so the basic premise is that in the Arctic winter, of course, it's awfully cold. There's no sunlight. It can get down in Antarctica, it can get down to minus 80 degrees Celsius. And in the Arctic, it regularly goes below minus 60. But you go down 2 meters. In most places, the Arctic ice is about 2 meters. And then you've got this, most people wouldn't say this is warm, but it's relatively warm. Seawater, it's about minus 2 degrees Celsius because of the salt. It
Yeah,
freezes.
hang on. You're dropping from minus 40, minus 50 down to minus 2.
Right. So there's a significant, what we call an engineering delta T, change in temperature.
Yeah, a tremendous delta T, frankly.
Yeah. And so just that on itself, if you think of like your propane barbecue, your propane tank is pressurized gas, right?
Yep.
So because it's contained, the pressure inside that tank is completely dependent on the temperature.
Right.
And so if you were to say put that propane bottle in the ocean, the pressure would be approximately 4.5 atmospheres. And if you put that tank in the cold air, the vapor pressure on that then drops down to below, if it's minus, well, at minus 42 Celsius, propane is about 1 atmosphere of pressure. So you have that difference of 3.5 atmospheres that you can work with. And if you think back to the steam engine days, you had these large steam engines being driven by huge pistons. In the early days, they were driven on less than an atmosphere of pressure. They were used on vacuum pressure as opposed to high pressure steam. And then eventually they did get to high pressure as materials improved.
But putting all the technical thing to one side, the key to this is there's a differential.
Exactly.
That's the key to everything, isn't it?
Right.
If
Yeah.
there's a differential in energy, which there is between those two, one is minus 2 and the other one's minus 40 degrees, and there's therefore a difference in pressure between the two, right? Then you can work with it.
Yeah. And I'm working with some people to develop so essentially then you've got this temperature difference, and for half the year approximately you've got cold weather in the Arctic and you can produce this power. Then when the other half of the year comes along, you can either go down to Antarctica and repeat the process, or you can change it and set up a whole bunch of like reflectors, heliostats, and do what they do in Spain. You collect the solar energy and then you
Yeah.
get 2 cycles. You get a steam
Right.
cycle and then what they call organic Rankine cycle. I was talking about propane, but it could be ethane or it could be some refrigerant, the commercial refrigerant that you're using.
It's all about gathering the energy that we can, hence by the heliostat that you talked about before, a bunch of mirrors reflecting all into one central point, which is the gathering point, as it were. Or you look working on the differential, that's difference between, I don't know, how deep are we going on the ice?
Literally right below the ice, that's the water temperature. In fact, the water temperature in the Arctic, like everywhere in the world, there's a layer that's about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius all
Right.
around the world. If you go down deep enough, I think you have to go down half a kilometer or so.
Well, that's the triple point, isn't it? Around that sort of point.
It's not so much the triple point, but it's just that the deep ocean water moves all over. And at the surface, what you have is it's mostly they have a lighter, fresher water. So that's why it stays at the top, even though it's
Right.
colder. And then as you go down farther, the water gets denser and colder. So the freezing process, if you imagine the Arctic Ocean, it's liquid, and then winter comes along and it starts to freeze. And what happens is the water in the ice freezes, or the water in the sea water freezes, but the brine falls down to the ocean floor, and that's what drives the ocean circulations. So the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, or even the Gulf Stream is driven as part of that. The Gulf Stream is like warm water coming from the Gulf of Mexico, but it's
Yeah.
the cold water falling to the ocean floor that drives all of these processes.
So when we're looking at all of the things that we were talking about in terms of, as you began your book, about food and water and energy and cooling, how important, is it to look at it in the round holistically, not in the silo?
Yeah, so I mean, I think of them as being all interconnected because, of course, I've done
Right.
the research and we can do this. So if you have the platform out there, and let's say you put some data centers in shipping containers up there, well, we can use the waste heat from those data centers to improve the efficiency of that energy process to the point with different technologies that I'm aware of we can essentially generate, depending on the outside temperature, generate as much or almost as much energy as we're actually using in the cycle. And a lot of engineers would say that's impossible. Or on the surface, it sounds like a perpetual motion machine.
No, but it isn't. What you're just saying is that the losses are so minimal, they are very small, but there's still a difference. You're always
Yeah,
going to make a loss.
yeah. So a perpetual motion machine would be something that operates at the same level forever.
Yeah.
So same temperature. We're talking about a temperature differential. So that
So there's always,
increases with the waste heat from the computer centers.
I think we're getting almost close to finishing up this podcast. Valerie, before I finish it up, you got any last questions?
Well, I was going to say, Jeff, every time we talk, I'm always amazed, and I just learn a little bit more every time you talk me through this, because I think we need to talk to Mark Carney somehow. I think we need to go talk
Well,
to him.
I'm trying to. I do have some contacts who have connections to the government, so I'm working through
Oh,
them.
come on, Mark, come
And
and talk to us.
actually, the timing for this is perfect because
Yeah.
we're looking for green energy. Carney has said that the data centers are going to run with clean energy, or at least pay the carbon tax if they're not using clean energy. But he's also talking about developing the Arctic. Mark Carney was born in Yukon. Uh, all of these things work together. If I can just go through a couple of the other things that are interested. So the
Please.
fresh water comes from when we freeze, like when we take energy out of the ocean, we're cooling the water, freezing it. And as I mentioned before, the brine gets separated from the
Yeah, it comes out of solution, doesn't it? It does.
exactly. And so you end up producing a tremendous amount of ice through this process. And then you can ship that ice around the world.
Yeah, it's freshwater ice. That's the point. It's a desalination plant.
It's a desalination plant, but instead of putting energy into it, you're extracting energy, or you're making energy from that process. And then if you have energy in anywhere, you can grow stuff because you can extract heat from the ocean, you can get light from your electricity. Then all you need is fresh water for plants and nutrients for them. And there you go. You grow stuff in shipping containers. Mushrooms, of course, don't even need light, so they can do all of that.
But it is, as I said right at the beginning when we opened this segment, it's about doing everything in one place, each part feeding the next part. So it becomes like a vicious cycle, if you like.
Well, a virtuous cycle is
Virtuous, yes.
I don't know. Have you been in the Arctic? It's pretty vicious. All right. I've got two questions really to finish it off with. So first one is really, what's something that you strongly believe about your work that you just don't think people quite get yet?
So when I talk about this, some people get it conceptually, and it's exciting when the light bulb goes off and it's like, yeah, I see the
Sure.
opportunity. Most of the people say, oh, well, that sounds nice, and just kind of go on. So I need to find those investors who are willing to put the money down and say, this is
You need a tech investor who actually understands a little bit about tech, really.
absolutely. And, when we were talking about Google or X or any of the ChatGPT, OpenAI, all of those companies,
Yeah.
they're basically limited by the amount of energy they can produce. And I'm
Of course.
saying, I've got the energy source for you. Just give me the project. Let's get this, or invest in this, and we'll build this for you.
Okay, I've got one last question for you. And this is proper blue sky thinking, I guess. If someone's listening earlier in their career and wants to head in your kind of direction, what's one thing they should start doing right now?
Well, obviously, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to work with somebody starting out. In fact, the way I envision this working is each of these things that I talked about would be a separate company. And so I'd be looking for people to work with, someone to take on the agricultural part, someone to
Right.
take on the fish farming part, someone to do the data centers. And, I named the company Big Time Engineering because I really want to work on big projects. I want to develop like an engineering empire that does everything so that if you come to me with an idea or we come to the company with an idea, we can help you all the way through from developing the concept to production and
Fruition. Yes,
yeah. So
absolutely.
Valerie, any last comments before we close up?
Just think it's a fabulous idea. I mean, I've thought that every time I talk to you.
Oh, fangirl. All right, look, thank you
Fangirl.
so much. Thank you so much. As ever, thank you, Valerie Merrill, excellent podcast partner. And Jeff Krehmer, what amazing ideas. Please check out his book. It's called
Infinite Resources, and you can find it
Infinite.
at infiniteresourcesbook.com. It's available on Amazon.
Perfect. And to all of you watching, I hope you find this sort of stuff interesting. We're trying to inform, intrigue, and also point back to the fact that if you are consider yourself a portfolio executive, you have your fingers in a number of different pies, and more importantly, you're a fractional executive. That's you don't work full time for anyone. You a bit of your expertise over there, a bit of your expertise over here. If this is the sort of thing that intrigues you, you should consider becoming part of or finding out more about the portfolio executive. But more about that next time. Until the next time you see us, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please, in these troubled times, please look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.